Hi, we continue in the short chapter of 2 Samuel 4 today, after the two assassins, Rahab and Baanah, have killed Ishbaal and are in the process of bringing the head to David, where they expect to get a reward, which we'll see what reward they get today. So if you haven't been following this unit, I've been showing the shape of 2 Samuel 2:1 to 5:5, and we're down here in the second half of this story down here. And right after this story, David is anointed king over Israel, and there'll be unity, at least for a while, between Judah and Israel. So this is the final step in clearing out the house of Saul. And all along, David has been denying responsibility for it, saying the sons of Zeruiah are too hard, and he's too soft for them, and he'll have a similar excuse here for why the death of Ishbaal had nothing to do with him. And we as readers have to decide whether we believe that or not. So as we've been looking at, there are many links between our unit here and between 2 Samuel 15 and 19, the Absalom story, and in particular here the role of the Benjaminites, who these two killers were that we saw last time. They're not mentioned as Benjaminites in our immediate scene, but they were last time. And also something that's important, not as important in our immediate scene here, but it's implicitly important, which is who are the people claiming David's royal authority. And these are Benjaminites, and so they are not listed among the group, but we just heard that when Ishbaal was courage failed, literally his hand got weak on the hold of the ring when he heard about the death of Abner, all Israel was terrified. And we looked at that last time, and it wasn't clear exactly why that is. So all Israel here relating to all the people in the house of Israel, because it'll be the house of Israel we'll see that will be claiming that David is ruling over them momentarily. And as we've been looking at our key words here, we're in this final paragraph here. It's a short chapter, only 12 verses. There aren't a lot of key words, but here head is the key. The head and the hands and the feet, framing around the head here of these different body parts, and recalling what the Philistines did to Saul in cutting off his head. So we enter into our story. So they, having killed David and having gone the long distance, as I noted last time, this roughly 200 kilometers from Mahanaim down to Hebron, it doesn't say they had any food with them or any provisions. And no matter how fast people can walk, assuming they could walk even 30 kilometers a day, that would take like a week. And we have the gruesome scene of them carrying the head of Ishbaal out in the hot sun in the desert. I can only imagine what condition it would be in after a week when they present it to David. So here it is. They brought the head of Ishbaal to David at Hebron and said to the king, "Here is the head of Ishbaal, son of Saul, your enemy." The enemy evokes 1 Samuel 26:8. Let's go back to that because there are a number of echoes here. So Abishai said to David, "God has given your enemy, Saul, into your hand." And David said, "No, don't destroy him. Who can raise his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" And that's been his principle. So apparently these two killers are not aware of that situation, that David has been, at least officially, very protective of Saul because he was the Lord's anointed. But of course, Ishbaal is not Yahweh's anointed. He's only been made king over Israel and Benjamin and other places at the will of Abner. We've heard nothing from Yahweh or the name Elohim, or even Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts or armies, who can also validate a voice of validation for a king. So we haven't heard that about Ishbaal, so we don't know that David has any sense of wanting to protect him. Is he perceive him as enemy? And notice it's not Ishbaal who sought David's life, it's Saul. So they're claiming here that Yahweh has avenged my Lord the king, speaking of David in the third person, on Saul and on his offspring, that killing his son is vengeance for killing the father. Who sought your life here, Asher Bakesh here, will be echoed ironically in verse 11 in the voice of David, as we'll see. So they're claiming Yahweh has done this. And the word for avenged here, naquamath, here is only a couple times in Deuteronomistic history. It's later in 2 Samuel when David will claim the God who gave me vengeance and brought down peoples under me. So David is claiming Elohim in this case, although Yahweh in the next couple of verses, who brought me out from my enemies and exalted me. So he's certainly willing to say that yes, Yahweh has avenged me. Is that what he's going to say about this death in particular? The phrase, my Lord the King, we've seen many times, and that's my note at 321, that we see it throughout this rest of the book. And then David answered Rechab and his brother Baanah, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite. Notice how the text slows it down by repeating those words in detail that we've already heard a couple of times. We've heard it several times up here, the sons of Rimmon, etc. As Pinsky notes below, David might imagine himself saying to the stupid, uncomprehending, stubborn, and already dead Rahab or Baanah, not Banana, the equivalent of, "You don't know anything about it." But here's what he actually says. As Yahweh lives, who has redeemed my life out of every adversity. A very set phrase that we'll hear twice more. Once out of David, really just before the end of his life, and once earlier. Let's look at this one in the Solomon succession story. So the king swore, saying, as the Lord lives, who has saved my life, exactly the same phrase. And as I swore to you by Yahweh, the God of Israel, your son Solomon shall succeed me, this to Bathsheba. So that's after Nathan and Bathsheba have convinced David that he'd already promised to put Solomon on the throne. So that's the second time we'll hear that. We heard it back similarly, not identically, back again in 1 Samuel 26, which we also just saw another echo of. As your life was precious today in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of Yahweh, and may he rescue me from all tribulation. This David to Saul, and then Saul saying, blessed you be my son David. So Saul temporarily comes around, although we see in the very next verse he knows in his heart that that's not going to happen. It's a temporary respite. So 3 times, once when it saved him from Saul, once speaking to Solomon about a broad perspective on Yahweh, and now here, so he uses that as a preface to say this. With the one who told me, see, Saul is dead, which brings us back to the Amalekite at the beginning of the chapter, and we look closely, or beginning of the book, and we look closely at that, of whether or not he was lying, which we know he is, in comparison with what we saw in 1 Samuel 31 of the narrator's description of the death of Saul and Jonathan, but whether David knows he's lying, knew he was lying, and that's an interesting question here. So David says, see, when the one who told me Saul is dead thought he was bringing good news, using the phrase here from 120. It'll be another couple of times in the Absalom story, another thing that echoes from here into the Absalom story and not anywhere else. I didn't list that in my chart here because it's a small detail, but just one more example of that. I seized him and killed him at Ziklag, recalling that right here. This was the reward, using that, of course, ironically, it's not there. It's not there in the Hebrew at all. This is what I gave him for his news. So there, the New RSV provides for reward. The Hebrew doesn't have that. So what might follow from that? What might these two people, Banah and Rahab, who walked all this distance carrying the head expecting a reward, think when David prefaces his response by saying, I seized the last person who brought me, quote, good news that Saul was dead. How much more then, he says. The phrase for how much more is off, which literally means nostril or nose, and we'll see it in chapter 6 for anger, for David's anger and Yahweh's anger. But Reese interprets this scene here a little differently. She says, one might imagine that killing Yahweh's anointed would be an example of how much more. That's not quoting Reese. But she takes as evidence that by now David knew that the Amalekite was lying and thus was not a righteous man. She rejects the notion that it's David's policy to kill messengers given other messengers later who aren't killed, the Absalom messengers, which was the other echo I just saw. But I'm not sure that's the exact parallel to the Amalekite lying, because we have to look more closely at the language of who's the wicked and who's the righteous. So when wicked men have killed a righteous man, plainly he's speaking of them as the wicked man and Ishbaal as the innocent, the Zadok, or the righteous man. And so how does that compare to the Amalekite? The Amalekite killed Saul, he allegedly said by Saul's request to prevent him from being killed by the Philistines. Was he a righteous man, or is he a wicked man, and is he not the righteous man? Reese thinks it's about the Amalekite not being the righteous man, but he's not the one that's parallel to the killers. The one who's parallel to the killers here is Saul, is the righteous man here. The wicked men here are parallel to whoever it was that actually killed Saul, the Amalekite or the Philistines. So I'm not sure Reese's comparison follows there. On his bed in his own house. And the question here is, how does David know that? They just said that they brought the head, but how does David know what happened in Mahanaim, 200 kilometers away, when they're the first ones to be bringing the news, as far as we can tell? Commentator Matzal below sees this as a, quote, character-elevating strategy by, quote, refraining from informing the reader how David gained detailed knowledge of the murder scene. It risks the appearance of granting a mere mortal the omniscience of divinity. But it can't be that. It can't be that the text is expecting us to believe that David just magically knew something had happened at a distance. There's no other examples of that. So we have to assume somehow that somebody informed him, although the text doesn't say that. And they would have to have raced on ahead of the killers to have gotten there first. They certainly didn't fly there. So that's left a little bit mysterious. And now he says, shall I not require, but seek? That's the echo of 4:8. So when the killer said, the man who was seeking your life, meaning Saul, he says, now shall I not seek the blood of the killer at your hand, his blood, which is to say, to seek recompense for the blood of Ishbaal at your hand and destroy you from the earth. As Halpern notes, the land is what is polluted and must be cleansed by the blood. Whereas in Deuteronomy 19:13 it is the covenant community that is affected. We can see that real quick here. Show no pity, you shall purge the guilt of innocent blood from Israel, so it may go well with you. And that's a lot of Deuteronomy's view, which says, show no pity, kill all the people who are not local, and kill anybody who violates any rule, and really expresses a strong language of no mercy at all. So that's not the situation here. The book of Deuteronomy is almost certainly written later, but scholars can disagree about that. And so he continues, and destroy you from the earth, which is a much stronger phrase than simply just getting the blood back. Destroy you from the earth, suggesting that they wouldn't even be buried, although that's not what happens, as we'll see. The word for destroy you, uvia arete here, using this root in the PL, which is a wordplay from berathite. Again, Matzel notes again that the wordplay between destroy you here and berathite encourages a positive reading of David's reply. As he notes, the author characterized David as a man of insight, a leader who knows Torah and carries out justice. That's if it's assuming that he knows Deuteronomy or not. It's not clear what Torah he's referring to there. This positive assessment of the execution of Rehab and Baanah encourages the reader to circle back and appraise the parallel execution of the Amalekite in like fashion, which is to say that was just. But that's only if we think this is just and we don't look behind the official claim and realize David is glad to have Ishbaal dead. Despite his disclaimer, he's glad to have him dead. And as I noted last time in the Mephibosheth story, at the end, it will be David who makes sure that the other grandchildren of Saul are dead, and there's no question about that. That's his turning them over there. So the fact that he's disclaiming any responsibility or interest in the death of Abner and Ishbaal must be tested by any reader to say, is this just propaganda that serves David well, or is he truly innocent and he did not want Ishbaal dead? But here's how the scene continues here. As Brueggemann notes, while Rehab and Baanah were wrong in their reading of Yahweh's will, he note how, quote, the lower agents always are indicted and executed, while the legitimate one who benefits from the act ends up vindicated, acquitted, and solidified in power. And isn't that the case? That whether it's the young men who execute it, and are sometimes executed, or these people who are just the fodder, like the Amalekite, it's almost always the low-level people then and now who face the consequences. So David commanded the young men, we hadn't seen them since 221, and they come up regularly as servants of David, and they killed them. They cut off their hands and feet. Halpern notes that it mimics the Philistines' treatment of Saul's corpse, but as we look back at 1 Samuel 31:9, it's they cut off his head. They didn't cut off his hands and feet. So there's a certain sense of desecrating the body for sure, but why their hands and feet? Perhaps because it's their hands by which they killed him and their feet by which they brought the body there, but that's guessing. And hung their bodies without their hands and feet beside the pool of Hebron, where the so-called play took place, where everybody died. As Halpern notes again, where the civil war ends just as it began at the pool of Gideon. But the head of Ishbaal, parallel to the head of Saul in this case, they took and buried in the tomb of Abner at Hebron. And isn't that interesting? As Halpern notes below, away from the house of Saul, only in 2 Samuel 21, in the scene I'm showing here, are the male heirs executed at Gibeon, and Saul and Jonathan removed to the tomb of their father Kish. David, which is the scene that follows this immediate scene here. David effectively prevented the development of a royal ancestral cult at Saul's tomb, which is to say, by separating his son Ishbaal from where Jonathan and Saul is, there's not one place to be the entire Saulide family. So he's now at Hebron, much under David's control. The head of Ishbaal is under control, just like Mephibosheth is under control at his table. And that's where we'll see the next time the tribes of Israel, not all Israel, not the house of Israel, plead for David to rule over them. And we'll see how that plays out next time. See you then.